Hello there, it's Amanda here. Welcome to Arts and Wellness Wednesdays. I apologise. I always start this off with an apology. Anyway, so last week I filmed, videoed it, and got lost in it. It's not lost. I've still got it on my. I think it's on my computer. And last week's episode, so I will post that today, and I try and get today's out in timely fashion. So there's lots of things happening today. Not necessarily today. There's lots of things happening um, tomorrow and Friday, and I will talk about that. Um, but one of the things I wanted to touch on, which is I touched on it in a Instagram post, and um, basically what it was an image that I did was just of scrap fabric. So for those of you who work with fabric, um, some of you may understand the even paper as well. This goes for paper as well. So when you're using fabric and when you're using paper, especially if you're painted on the fabric. Now, if you've painted on the paper, created on the paper, and you've cut bits off, and there's the scraps left, when you look at them, you will understand how sometimes you just think, no, I can't throw them away. It's got paint on it, it's got stuff on it that I've already done, but I can create something else. So, what I've done in the past, and I loosely complain about it, that when you start using cutting paper or fabric, you always seem to end up with more. There seems to be this explosion of more scraps. So I cut up these scraps and use them for other projects, which you will see. One of them is behind me. So some of the painted fabric pieces actually went into this particular piece, and you'll see it if you go onto my Instagram at Reality Arts feed. You'll see the you'll see it more clearly, um, and some of the detail. So you end up with so many more pieces that I've now had to get a container, one of these containers with my um, painted fabric scraps, African material fabric scraps, and then just ordinary material. And I've tried to be more ordered. And what's happened again is where I used to have my fabric um, stacked on shelves and in larger bins, they just seem to have multiplied since I've got more and more, I'm doing more and more fabric work. I'm getting more and more pieces. Okay, so before I was so rudely interrupted, the whole family is creative. So the other two are next door. My husband and my son are next door, and they're doing what they're doing. Anyway, so yeah, so what I wanted to say in the post, well, what I said in the post was basically, you gather up these fabric scraps, and initially, when you're working with them in an individual project and you've cut them up, you don't necessarily think that they're anything until you get a collection of them together. And I've been collecting them. And the other thing I collect is using um, when I'm stitching or sewing. This has got a few fabrics. It shouldn't have any fabric scraps in, but it has got a few. Um, but over time, these are all the pieces of fabric that I've cut off projects, or wool, and it's just like, this is how much would have been thrown away. So why not take this and see what else I can create with it? And so that's what I'm doing, um, and have been doing. And so that was really to say, think about areas of your life that you have been disregarding, that you have been not necessarily misusing, but you haven't taken care of. You just think, oh, I'll just ignore that. The amount of pains as you get older, the amount of pains Okay, maybe I'm just speaking for myself because not everybody does. But the amount of pain that you think, oh, I never felt that before, and you can ignore it and it might get worse, or you can get it seen to. So um, it's when you look at those areas that you have been disregarding, they're almost like these scraps that you just think, oh, that's no use and that's no use. But if you gather them together and think, okay, let me actually look at this area and see what I've been doing. Have I been taking time for myself? Have I been nurturing myself? Have I been taking time out? Have I been sitting in my studio so I can tick all of these? I've been sitting in my studio day in, day out, and working back to back. Not Although I can't really say that really. I was going to say not really taking many breaks, but I take a break because Cole, the dog, comes in and he like it's funny. He because we go out in the morning, kind of like 6:37, and then I come back and I start work, and then I might take a tea break or coffee break, and then I'll come back, and then he'll come sort of like an hour later with the expectation, like, with his head on my lap and kind of start making noise as if to say, you need to come out. And then he does the same thing at 5 o'clock. It's really funny that he has this awareness of the time, because then at 5 o'clock, it's just like, I'm ready to go out. He's ready to go out, and he will kind of make up noise, again, come to me, come, because I'm usually at the computer at this time, put his hand on my knee, start jumping up, put his hand on my knee. And yeah, so then we go out. He runs about and runs around and goes and sees his friends down the road, and then comes back. But so he's my kind of, okay, now it's time to break, because otherwise I'd just be from the studio doing stuff to the computer, and I might come back and then it's dark now. Um, so when you take all these areas of your life, how are you nurturing them? How are you looking after them? Because over time, these little parts of your life that you have been disregarding, they become bigger and they become issues and they become problems. So, as creatives, as artists, we need to make sure that we spend the time looking after ourselves as well as being creative, because every time we create something, a bit of us is going out. The time that it takes to do a thing, or the time that you sit, the amount of time I sit, even just creating things like this, that my thoughts, my um, inspiration, and everything else that might go pour into a piece, blessings, and things that I hope that whoever then gets to pick up my piece of art and put it in their home feels blessed when they do that. And I feel that art materials, um, what we create, there's an energy that goes into that. So somebody can be healed by um, picking up a piece of art and having it in their home, depending on what it, let's say, depending on what it is. Um, and that is something that, as Arts and Wellness Wednesdays, we know that art and creativity has effect on our health and well-being. And so, as artists, we need to make sure that we're we're taking time to replenish, because we're constantly giving to our crafts, to finishing a piece, to using our mind to come up with other things, or the inspiration, or so we need to get ourselves into that position where we are, say, like I was asked, do you want to go to the beach this morning, and I turned it down because I said, oh no, I've got some work to do. And it's just like, what's wrong with you? You could have gone, spent some time, and I've said this before because I've done it before, and gone and found that it makes you feel so refreshed when you come back, and you're ready to go on. So I just wanted to touch on that, and just it's a reminder for us all, and especially me, because I know that I really do need to remind myself to step back, because sometimes when you're stepping back, you're recharging, you're renewing, you're making things, repairing, just like we need good sleep, so it gives the body time to repair. Um, so it's just a reminder. and I'm constantly reminding myself. So the other thing I wanted to remind you about today and tomorrow is Pass the Brush, Thursday and Friday, and it is where um, there's over 30, if not about 34 artists, both black artists and white artists, coming together, and we're elevating the voices of black artists and sharing what our story, what we're doing. Some are having live Instagram feeds, some have recorded Instagram feeds. I'm sharing the platform and sharing Lisa I'm sharing Laura Fedora. If you go to @Laura Fedora, she's a card maker, a paper crafter, and so I'm sharing her platform and sharing my work with her audience, and it's a way for us to come together. And some of the things I'll be doing is so sharing my work from way back when I started to kind of like now, and there's so much in between, but there's only so much you can share in like 10 or 12 posts across the course of the day. So I'm sharing on the 17th, the Friday, and I'm really looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to sharing some of the motivations and the things that I've been doing um, down, down, down those years that I've travelled as an artist. And I will be also sharing on my um, Instagram feed. There's also going to be some giveaways, and I will put the details in. So I wanted you to mainly, the takeaways for today is think about all the areas of your life that you have not been looking after, and however small they are, and the smaller the better, because as I say, it's these small ones that kind of build up, and if you roll them down a hill, start to become boulders, because they've just gathered momentum and join in with other things. And think about what you're offering, think about the things that you're creating, because every time there is an output, you need to be putting something back in. So whether it is going to spend some time in the garden or in nature, or reading, or whatever it is you like doing and it nurtures you, then that's what you need to get on and do. So come and join us. The main hashtag is hashtag Pass the Brush Art, and you'll see all the artists taking part and be part of this experience, be part of the conversation. We talk about our experiences as black artists, and um, there is discrimination, there is injustices, and until we speak about them and say, well, it's fine. Like somebody had asked me about calling myself a black artist or white artist. Well, not that I call myself a white artist, but that if I call myself a black artist and white artists call themselves white artists, that isn't that is that not adding to us not being able to move forward as people? And at the end of the day, no, it isn't, because there's such a disparity between black artists and white artists, in the sense of when we look at the situation around the world, and we look at the 400 years of the enslaved being not allowed to hold on to their culture, their names, everything was wiped out, and then it's been built on, because then you're free but you're not free, and then all of the laws that have been put in place. Look at the the national anthem, was it verse 13 or whatever it is, the US national anthem, and there's been years and years and years, hundreds of years of not being allowed to have opportunities, not being allowed to take part, not being chosen at all. Um, and I think I remember sharing this when I was younger. I remember my dad trying to raise from the bank. Back then it was like back then it was £500. If you think £500, um, trying to put down money for a mortgage, and the bank refused him, and we were never able back then to purchase our own home. And it wasn't because he didn't have a job and he couldn't pay it back. He could, but they weren't lending to black families. And and just look at the information that's coming out. We know that there is so many things that black people are discriminated against. And so when we have the conversations, like, so looking at as artists, I know that there have been situations over my years where it was a clear case of discrimination. So I can't ignore that and say, okay, well, you know, at the end of the day, I wasn't discriminated because I was an artist. I was discriminated because I'm black. And how do you then move forward? We have these uncomfortable conversations, and it's important that we do, and look at the reason why I have to at times say, yeah, I'm a black artist, because we have to look at the discrimination that has taken place and still takes place. And if we, like is said, why do you, so I've heard this, it's not been said to me, but why do you have to keep going on about slavery? And it's just like, well, you'd rather me not talk about it because it makes you uncomfortable. If I don't talk about what happened and the barbaric things that took place, then it's almost like you want a part of the history that you're a part of to disappear just to make you feel comfortable. But then you don't want to, you'll raise up and argue that these statues, where these statues to these people who not just only owned slaves, but they fought to kill Americans. It's like black and white, but you want to celebrate these, and you're saying it's an affront to your rights or your history. So there's so many people who are articulating everything better than me, but I'm talking from my experience, and I'm talking from what I see. And so yes, I will start to have those, it's sometimes, oh, let's just forget that it happened. It's just like, no, we can't, because at the end of the day, every time I walk in the room, that's my lived experience. There's going to be an aspect of somebody. And every time, say, my son travels to the States, my fear is that, he may meet the wrong policeman who decides that his life is worth nothing, as we've seen played out in the news, as we've seen on TV, have we've seen countless and countless times, men, women, and children. And so, no, we can't. Until we can address the wrongs that have been done. I mean, look. I'm living in Barbados at the moment, and look at all of the atrocities that were committed by plantation owners who owned slaves. Back in up until the 60s, there were places in Barbados that, as a black person, you couldn't go. So these are all things that we can't just suddenly ignore, because it makes people uncomfortable to talk about it. And we have to address why these things happened. We know greed, ignorance, fear, and what rights need to be done, how we need to change things. Because there's a lady who was talking about, if I played a game of Monopoly, 400 games of Monopoly, and each time you said I couldn't collect my, when you pass go, you collect $200, and then for the next 100 games, I could collect the $100, but I had to give you back 95%. I'm disadvantaged. I've been disadvantaged 500 games, and we're not starting off on the same footing. Yeah, we're 400 years of of discrimination, and it's now where, you know, the ancestors of the slave owners, the plantation owners, have been, um, they have had, what's the word? Reparations for the slaves that they owned and that they lost because slavery was ended. They were paid. The slave owners were paid, and the descendants of slaves have had to pick up the pieces and try and build and still deal with the, there was one news, and it said there was in one of the states in America, blacks are 13% of the population in one of these states, and it's probably the same around, a lot of the states. But when you think 13% of the population is made up of people of Afro-Caribbean descent, but 40% of those who are incarcerated, they make up 40% of those who are incarcerated in that state's jail. So, why is it that black people are, 100 times more likely to be, and that's not the figure. There is a figure, but it's past. I can't remember what the figure is, but it's a 500 more times likely. It's like one of these. You just think, really, to be stopped by the police than their white counterpart. So so we're going to be kind of addressing, a variety of different things. We're going to be coming together as artists because, like I was saying to my Laura, who I'm sharing her platform is, there's so many, as we talked, we realised that there's so many similarities. There's so many places that, you may not have, never knew me before. We came together on a phone call, and then as we talked, it was just like, oh my gosh, there are so many similarities, and you'll get to hear about some of them over the course of the 2 days. But you'll also, think about yourself and your journey. When we think about people who are different from us, who don't look like us, let's think about, we all share emotions. Yeah, we all share common emotions. We've all been in places where we feel fear, frustration, anger, doubt, love, happiness, joy, excitement. So if we think about those shared experiences, and if we think about the similarities that we have, we're both mothers, we're both, creative, and then the list goes on, that you have places to build on, but we can't avoid that discrimination goes on, and that we have to speak out about it, and that both as black and white artists, people, we have to talk out, we have to speak out about it, because we do want to build a better world, and we do want to focus on the joy and the how we can be inspirational, how we can be motivational, and we're all doing it from our own little corners of the world with our voices. And when our voices are brought together, we can make some amazing changes, and so many amazing changes are happening. So I want to thank you for joining me. We're going to leave it there, and I hope you can join us for Pass the Brush. If not, come and join me on my Instagram account. Come and join us on Laura's at Laura Fedora, her Instagram account, and check around at all the other artists that are taking place, and see some of the amazing work that you may not have come across. There's so many of the artists that it's just like, oh my gosh, they're amazing on both ends, and it's really inspiring to be among so many artists, and there are so many more. And we just give thanks to at Queenpreneur, Queenpreneur. I always pronounce that wrong, and Dinah Wakely, who came together and were the main organisers, and there are so many other people who have helped make this a success. So just give thanks to them, and I just hope that you were inspired. And as always, share what you're doing, and just step out of the boat, step out of your comfort zone. Art has an amazing impact and effect on all our lives. Whether you're an artist, whether you actually create the piece, or whether you put something together, you're still being creative, or whether you're just, you're a viewer, you view the art, it has an amazing impact on our health and well-being. And just be part of our journey, be part of the journey, and keep raising your voice, keep showing up in support, go and support all the artists who are taking part, visit them and their sites, and stay blessed and be that blessing that you are. Take care for now.